Hi, my name is Leslie Berger, and I would like to welcome you to Renew. Renew is a show about the College of Forest Resources at Mississippi State University. This college promotes and enables the conservation, management, and wise use of our natural resources. There are 3 departments within the College of Forest Resources, and today we're going to feature the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Aquaculture. And here to represent that unit is Professor Ray Igley and postdoctoral associate Dr. Jared Elmore. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
I'm excited to learn a little bit more about your research that you've got going on in the department. I'm vaguely familiar with it because we are colleagues in the same department, but I don't know some of the specificity, so I'm really excited to see how you're using drone technology in wildlife. And drones are something that people are familiar with because this is something that's been used by the military, it's in the spy movies, and now it's recreation. You can go to Walmart and buy a drone off the shelf and be able to play around with it in your yard. But we're using it for wildlife research and wildlife conservation as well, and that's the kind of research that both of you are working on. So could you tell me a little bit about how you're using these technologies to advance conservation?
Sure. So our use of drones right now, they are nothing new. We've seen them for a while now and easily accessible to the public. You know, you can go out there to commercial, like you said, Walmart, if there was a Radio Shack, and pick up your own little package of a drone and have a camera on it. Even my son had one that could fit in the palm of my hand. But we were working with some folks from USDA Wildlife Services that help with what we call wildlife damage management, which in this case we're looking out for aircraft and aircraft hitting wildlife. So if you've seen the movie Sully, and Sully took off from New York Airport and they hit some Canada goose and had to land in the Hudson Bay.
Right.
We don't want that to happen.
No
one wants it to happen. We don't want it to happen when it comes to aircraft that we're flying as passenger planes. We don't want it to happen on the military side too when they're doing practice runs. So we have a lot of concern for aircraft and wildlife interacting in ways we don't want them to. And so that's what came up for drone applications. There are 2 sides of it. The one, can we use drones to harass or otherwise push animals off of airports so they won't interact with aircraft in the way we don't want them to. And then also is a way we can use drones to count the number of animals we have in areas. So right now, as biologists, we'll go out there and we'll do all different kinds of methods to count animals. If you're into birding, we'll listen for birds, look for birds, measure a distance to the birds, and all that information helps us with determining the number of birds in the area. Well, when you have multiple people doing that, then we introduce what we call bias. So I might count birds different than Jared may count birds, and they may different than you count birds, and it's just inherent bias that we each have. So with drones, the possibility is we can go out there with a drone and a tablet and have all the technology we need in our hands to fly an area and get a count of animals on the ground. Sounds very simple. And drones have been around for a while, but we're learning more and more that this simple approach has a lot more to it. And we kind of knew it we were going in, but we thought more would have been done before we got started on this.
Sure, and you learn as we go along.
We do. It's research. You get into it and you have some questions, and then along the way you keep learning and new questions emerge.
Exactly. So you brought some pictures with you that we can show people some of how you're using some of these drones and some of the data that you're getting that. So we're going to show these pictures, and if you would, you and
Jared, do you want to walk us through? Because Jared's the one who actually captured these.
Sure. Yeah. So these images were captured out at the Mississippi State University near the National Training Academy where the deer pens are located. And this is actually a photo from our dual lens sensor, which has a thermal sensor on the left side and a visual sensor on the right side. And so what you can see in that left image is you can see some hot spots that aren't as easily identifiable in the right image. But if you look in really close on that right image, you can actually see that those are deer. And so we can use some of these types of technologies where we have thermal and visual to be able to go out and identify animals which may be difficult to ID using just a visual sensor.
Especially for animals that are more active at night, those nocturnal organisms are just hard to get to be able to see when it's dark. And so using this thermal technology just like in those military spy movies, you can see, you know, what's behind the wall or see what's in the dark and be able to get that information from those animals anyway.
Yeah, and this next image here is now looking at a bird, and we think it was a northern harrier. We didn't get it up close to confirm the identification. But on the left-hand image, if you did not have that thermal image, that heat signature, it'd be hard to pick out where an animal is in that landscape, you know, in that picture. So we can see that there's a bird there. And then the right-hand picture, we have the visual side, so we can say, hey, there's the bird too. We see that as people. Just like if I see a Ford truck going down the highway, I know it's a Ford truck. A computer might not.
Sure.
And so to take out that human bias part, the observer bias, like if I go out birding and Jared goes out birding and you go out birding, we might have different counts of animals. Well, now we're putting that on the computer side.
Right.
And so that little box, we call it a bounding box, and we can feed that into the computer and say, this is a northern harrier.
Sure.
This is a heat signature of one. This is one out in the daytime and visual. And then the computer can learn. It's called AI or convoluted neural networks, real complicated stuff. We let the computer vision experts on campus and Geosystems Research Institute, Dr. Satish Samyapan and his research associate Milan Zhu, handle that part. But they can train these algorithms to know that's a northern harrier or a white-tailed deer or a coyote. And the more images we can feed it, the better it can actually pick those out of the landscape.
Right. So then you just fly the drone over transects or over areas that you want to survey, and it's collecting those images, both their heat signatures and photographs, and you can put that information into the computer, and the computer sorts it all out and says you saw 3 harriers and 4 deer and 1 opossum. If you train it with you have the right information.
And that's where the research comes in,
right,
because the first part is the training,
right.
Or part of it is the training. The other part is the bias.
Sure.
If you're flying a drone overhead, and some animals, they might be scared of it.
Sure.
And they'll move. And so you might count that animal in the first image you get, and then meanwhile it moves down the field. And then you go over it again, and you think, oh, I have 2
of them, right.
But you only have 1. And so that's a sampling bias that we're also investigating on this.
Sure.
Anything from flying over live animals to decoys. And you really need the reverse order. Decoys, because we know where they are. They won't move. And some look a lot like wildlife. We have, how many do we have now?
We have deer, coyotes, crows, owls, pigeons, doves. We have all kind of decoys.
Yeah, stuffed into a storage room right now. But
right. Right.
Yeah, so we can vary the number, vary the posture to an extent. The survey platform. So we'll have them out on mowed grass like you have inside of airport operations area. We'll have them in slightly taller grass. And South Farm here at Mississippi State University offers a lot of that kind of survey platform. Even the empty parking lots during summer when we don't have as many students on campus, they serve as also a nice survey platform or background we can have those decoys on. And then we also want to get live animals, so whenever there's an opportunity to get some images of those, we go for it.
Use that too.
He goes for it. He's Part 107, so he can fly it.
Right, so I do want to point out that to do this research, it's not something you can go to Walmart and train yourself and then do it. You have to have the special training to be able to fly drones, and that's what you were referring to with the Part 107.
Part 107.
Is that pilot training, the same kind of pilot training that aircraft flyers have to use. It's permission that you have to have. It's illegal to fly them for research without that special permission.
Right. Yes. Any type of use that is not for personal, recreational purposes, you do have to have a Part 107 to fly. And so capturing images like we are, you do have to have a Part 107 certification. Also, if you plan on flying at night or over people, you have to have that same certification.
Right.
It is really similar to the knowledge exam that pilots go through. Basically, it's just lacking a lot of the flight components of having those hours logged in an aircraft.
Sure, that makes perfect sense. So, important thing to note, everybody's got these drones and I think it's really cool. I've been at the beach and seen a drone fly over filming people, and that's not legal. So I just point that out.
Maybe, but just
highly
recreationally,
unlikely,
you have to watch it. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you also have some images that you brought related to wild hogs, which are a real problem.
Yeah, so one of the main things that I'm focused on is we call wildlife habitat. So different components in the landscape that an animal uses to survive and reproduce, all the things that wildlife want to do. And so looking at that research side of the program. So the drone stuff is more on the damage and the airport setting. And the wild pigs got more into, I wanted to manage a landscape for different wildlife species. And when you go in there after doing something like prescribed fire or selective herbicide, and you're like, well, it could have been that treatment that changed the landscape and changed the food component and the structure. It may also be, oh, pigs destroyed half of this, so it messes up our results. And so something that looking at with wild pigs is I want to learn more about them, and surprisingly there again, we have a good bit of information about pigs, but we're lacking some insights.
Okay.
And so the research we have going right now is looking at ecological impacts. And it started with a conversation at some personnel at Noxubee Refuge right down the street from us. And they want to know how pigs are moving across the landscape. So we set up traps out at Noxubee, and I think we have a video of one right now, that we're able to look at this on our cell phone and actually watch the pigs. In normal trapping, you want to capture a whole sounder. We want to keep at least one individual from this group, the sounder, outside the trap, so that after we collar the female, she doesn't move a long distance. She doesn't do what we call a dispersal event. So this pig came in the top left corner there, and we didn't want him coming in because we want at least one pig outside. And so this is one way we use technology again. In this case, it's using it on my cell phone, and we can drop the trapdoor exactly when we want to, or my PhD student Tyler Evans can drop it. But just using your cell phone, you can do that with this new technology, and it's a great way that, once again, we can learn more about wildlife through applications of technology.
Right.
I won't get into more detail on that. That's a big project, but in general, looking at how they're moving across the landscape, how many they have using genetic sampling, and then getting more into ecological impacts. What are they eating? How their wallows and rooting behaviors affecting other wildlife. Okay. And so it's pretty broad scale, but it's going to be fun.
It sounds like there's just so many different things that are going on, and I can see why you brought Jared on to help you. Jared, we don't have very much time left, but I do want to ask you, when you finish this postdoctorate position, where do you think you would like to go next? Do you want to continue in research, or do you want to do teaching, or what are options that you're considering?
My long-term goal is to be a professor at a research-heavy university. I do like teaching, so I'd like to be able to teach some. I like extension too, so that may not be out of the question.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like to do research, so probably research heavy, hopefully at a university, but not outside the question.
Right.
To go outside of, academia.
Sure. Well, there are a lot of options, both here and then across the world. So the training you're getting here with Dr. Iglay will position you well. So I wish you the best as you pursue that.
Thank you.
I hope that all of you have learned a little bit more about the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Aquaculture here in the College of Forest Resources at Mississippi State. There's some really fascinating research that's going on using cutting-edge technology, from drones to cell phone applications and more that we just didn't have time to get into. If you're interested in these topics, please feel free to reach out to me, and I will connect you with these fine individuals I have with me today. But until then, I hope you enjoy the bountiful resources we have here in the state, and I will see you again soon. I have been your host, Leslie Berger.